again, this might be something that I don't end up posting because it might not make any sense. But anyways, I've been doing a lot of thinking lately. I've struggled with some sadness. Man, maybe I feel like I always say that, so maybe I just always struggle with sadness. And maybe even some disappointment, frustration, but it comes from sadness. And anyways, when I was writing in my journal last week, I just started to draw this picture to try and clarify my thoughts. I am not an artist. So anyways, and I left it. And then Summer and I were just watching a movie the other day, and I was feeling it so strongly that day, and I just didn't know what to do with the emotions that were inside. So I went and grabbed a paper and I sat beside Summer and I just started to draw to clarify what I was feeling. And again, I'm not an artist. But so initially, this was the picture that came to mind. And I think, if I'm honest, this is what I want life to look like with God. And it's this perfect circle of birth, and you go around and you come to death. And there are problems along the way, but if you look, they all resolve themselves nicely, concisely, to the point. If you watch The Office, Andy Bernard likes to sing a lot. And I remember there was one time where someone while he was singing. And so he was very upset because he didn't get to resolve the notes. So he was kind of like, "You are the sunshine of my life." He didn't get to bring it down. And I think that this is how I feel. I want this to be how life looks. That yeah, there are going to be blips along the way, but everything's going to neatly circle itself out and complete itself. There will be completion to each trouble. And then as I sat beside Summer, I kept drawing. And if I'm honest, and as I've reflected more, I think this is also how I feel in my depression. But this is what my reality is. Or maybe this is what my reality feels like. And what you maybe can't see by quickly looking at this picture is that each of these finishes. Like this one weaves around and comes over here, and it looks messy and it looks incomplete, but somehow it finishes. And sure, there are a few perfect, neat little circles that do tie themselves up nicely, but generally, this is what life feels like. And I feel like my head is going a million miles an hour sometimes with depression. And the other day when Ted and I were just having a tough moment, I wasn't going to show him this. I just pulled him out and I said, this is what my heart feels right now. It feels like chaos and I can't follow everything that's going on. But I think that when I would write it out, and what I would forget is that if you look though, the big circle still finishes. That even though it doesn't look as nice and neat as this one, as I would like it to look, the circle still gets completed. And the other thing is, these little things do get finished. And this week I was thinking, we bought new couches. And so I went to go sell our old couches. And they were the couches that Summer and I had when we were on our own. And unexpectedly, when we found someone to buy them and they were going to come pick them up, Summer had a meltdown. She totally started crying and asked why we had to get rid of those couches. Why did they have to go or whatever? And she cried and I held her and I asked, "Why is this making you sad?" And she said that they were from our time together, and she was feeling really sad. And the next thing you know, I find her and she's laying on the couch crying and whatever. And Ted just kind of left us alone, and I actually started to feel sad with her and just reflecting about it. And the next morning, Ted said to me, we were just sitting quietly on the porch, and Ted said, "Why do you think Summer was feeling sad?" And I said, "You know what?" I said, "Because I think that was one of the last pieces of us, of her and I. Not that life hasn't moved on and been good, but there were pieces that we had that represented what her and I had together when we just had each other." And I just said to Ted, and it feels like all those pieces are going away. And I felt sad about it and whatever. But then a couple days later, when I was writing in my journal, I wrote down that at that time in my life, when everything went down with my first marriage, and if you don't know the story, it was terrible and it was chaos and it just was basically a bad movie. And then Summer and I were on our own. And if I had to describe that time in that moment, I would say that this is how it felt. Oh my gosh, I felt like I had no strength. Like you were just going day to day for a long time, just trying to deal with it. And I would have described this as my life, and I would have cried and begged and pleaded for it to be different, either for my marriage to heal or for, actually, honestly, to meet somebody and to get married again so that Summer and I weren't on our own, so I wasn't a single parent and whatever. And I would have begged and pleaded and longed for that and whatever. But looking back and realizing that those couches brought sadness, because attached to that sadness of saying goodbye to those couches were actually really good memories. And what felt like this actually created something worth missing. And I'm obviously really happy now, and I'm happy I have Ted, and I'm happy I have my other 3 kids, and I'm happy we're a family of 6, and I wouldn't change anything. But I think at the time I would have wanted to change my situation back then, divorcing, a very terrible divorce, and a very terrible home situation for a bit, and whatever, and I think I would have wanted to change it. But I'm glad that God finished the circle like this, because as chaotic as it seemed when you're in it, it actually became something that was worthy of missing. Because it actually had more joy in it than I thought, and more good in it than I thought in the moment. And I think what I'm trying to remember right now is, right now when my heart feels like this, and my head feels like this, I need to remember that maybe a few years down the road, or a few weeks down the road, or whatever it takes for certain circles, I just need to remember that eventually, each of these twists and turns, even though it's not this perfect circle, it will be something that will be worth missing, that will bring joy when you look back on it and when you remember it. And I hope that I can remember that even though sometimes this is what life feels like, there is still going to be a complete circle. This isn't a gaping open circle, an unfinished circle. And so maybe it doesn't look like this. And honestly, this is unrealistic. But now that I have been removed from some of the situations, I can see the beauty in this. And so maybe now I'm in a new version of this, and man, this week I have begged and wished for some really neat and tidy circles instead of this, and I have wished for my head to be this, for my head not to be this, because this is sometimes what depression feels like to me. But the circle will finish. There is a completion here. And there is beauty in all these winding paths. And so maybe I'm just trying to encourage somebody that if this is what you're feeling, just wait. Maybe in hindsight you'll see the beauty. Hopefully along the way you'll see the beauty. But a complete circle is happening. I hope this makes sense. I don't know if it does.